Good evening. Welcome to the Village Board meeting. This is the Village of Pleasantville Board of Trustees meeting for Monday, September 27. If you are watching live on Monday, September 27, we encourage you to call in if you have questions or comments. The call-in number is 769-1677. As you know, you can also watch Village Board meetings both live and in on-demand webcasts afterwards at pctv76.org. And Cablevision carries PCTV on as well as the government channel. As you know, Verizon, which recently got a franchise for their FiOS service, has now wired both Village Hall and the school district. And the school district channel is number 32. The PCTV channel is number 36. And as of the moment, we still don't have a channel assignment from Verizon for the government channel. So our next work session is Monday, October 4 at 7 p.m. And our next regular meeting is Monday, October 11 at 8 p.m. with a work session at 7. I had a couple of announcements I wanted to make, and then we'll move to our first agenda item, which is a presentation on the farm market by our intrepid farm market chairman, Peter Rogovin, who is here in service above and beyond the call of duty, which is something I have said about him many times, but this time it's really true. Recently had his...
All the other times it wasn't true.
Some of the other times.
Other times I was just
warming up to the idea.
I did want to make a couple of announcements, and the first is that as many of you know, we had an event here last week which required the evacuation of the high school and a very significant emergency response, which happened at the high school. Blessedly, in the end, there was no immediate threat, and school is now back to normal. But it certainly was not normal on that day, and we have a number of people to thank, as well as a couple of points to make going forward. And one of them is that the Pleasantville Police did an excellent job, I think, of responding to a request from the school district and arriving at the scene and assessing what needed to be done. Our friends in county government assisted with a very substantial level of support from the county police department and the various other county agencies involved. As it happened, there was also a training program going on for emergency response relatively nearby, and we also had a response from quite a number of other communities. Our friends and neighbors in Mount Pleasant assisted us with traffic control as well as a number of other things, and so we thank the Mount Pleasant Police. The matter is a subject for lots of deconstruction, and in fact tomorrow will be the subject of a briefing and review at the county level involving all the local forces as well. The good thing about it is that in the end it was resolved with no difficulty, and it will also provide an opportunity to kind of assess what happened and what our plans were, how everything worked, and use it as a kind of a training session to go forward. But I also want to say, and this is something that I think has been made clear to the high school students, ought to be made clear to everybody else, at any time the notion of creating a threat in or around a school is a matter that's going to be taken extremely seriously. It is very difficult to put a public safety official in the position of trying to assess an unknown threat that could affect a large number of kids. And so parents and members of the school district can take comfort in the recognition that there are an awful lot of people available to help, and to help in a strategic way when an incident like this happens. But anybody who might consider an idle threat of this kind needs to understand that it is a crime, and it's a crime that will be prosecuted, and that you will be causing a lot of trouble for an awful lot of people. So we ask everybody to keep in mind their responsibilities to the community and to the first responders. So, second thing I wanted to mention, and on a brighter note, that is with the assistance of the Chamber of Commerce, we supported a program called $25 on the 25th of September, encouraging people to spend $25 in a Main Street business in local downtowns. We encourage that on all occasions for people to think about shopping here in the village of Pleasantville. The 25th has passed, the spirit has not, and so whenever you have an opportunity to think about patronizing a local business, please try to take advantage of that and recognize it's those local businesses, either through ownership of their buildings and the taxes they pay, or the taxes they pay indirectly through the leases that they are a part of that help float everybody's boat and are paying for our government and our schools and our roads and our police. So if you can recycle money through your own Pleasantville economy, you benefit everybody. So thank you to the Chamber of Commerce, and in particular Tony Emerson, who is sitting here before us on the subject of farm market, for great service. Tony was out and around putting up posters for the 25 on 25 campaign, and here's hoping that people noticed them and took advantage. So with that, I will invite Peter Rogovin, our chair of the Farm Market Committee, to give us an update on a survey that was recently done for the farm market. As you know from past meetings and from your own experience, the farm market has been bigger and better than ever, which is a high compliment because it was pretty big and pretty good before. So welcome, Peter.
Thanks. My mic? All right.
We'll get out of the
We'll
way.
get out of your way, too.
All right. Well, thanks for having us in tonight. We're going to be presenting the results of the visitor survey that was fielded over the summer. We have had, I think anyone who's been to the market has seen how the attendance has been up. The market's been doing very, very well, but there's nothing like going out into the market and asking people how we're doing and getting some of their input. The report that we're going to be presenting tonight contains opinions. Most of them are the visitors. Some of them are mine, based on the analysis of the data. And it's important to note for everyone that while we're really pleased with the feedback that we heard, we set up the survey to be as objective as possible. There were many opportunities for people to ding us, and all the questions were very balanced. So, we really went out there with an open mind. Of course, we're pleased that in general we got such positive feedback. Before I dig in, and sorry that it's dark while I'm doing this, but I did want to acknowledge Susan and Miriam from Community Market. There we go. Miriam, the president, Susan, the marketing manager, and thank them for all their contributions in getting our market up and going and making the transition from where we were to where we now are. So let me just hit a couple of summary points, and then we'll dig into the data. I think the first big takeaway is that the reconfigured market is a runaway hit. We've more than doubled the visitation. We have very strong community support from citizens, the merchants. Pretty much everyone has just been very, very pleased with the market, and that comes across in the data that we're going to present. What people like: the improved flow and safety, the social aspects, and the expanded vendor variety is what the visitors cited as their favorite changes. Things that they'd like us to continue to work on: filling in the missing vendor categories and improving parking availability. The visitors tell us that they're coming more often, spending more money, more time, with more vendors than ever before. And that's great. A lot of that could be the economy. We like to think that it's just a very different market experience that's getting people to spend a bigger part of their weekend with us. We're also drawing, and we'll go over the detail in a few minutes, small but meaningful crowds from other parts of Westchester that already have farmers markets, which is almost a little bit redundant, because now I think almost every town has or is planning a farmers market. You could turn back the clock a couple of years and we were the only ones in the area. Now Armonk, Chappaqua, we've heard Hawthorne wants to start one at their train station. But importantly, we saw right in the survey people saying, I come here from Harrison, or I'm coming here from Mount Kisco, or I'm coming here from Bedford. And I drive past a couple of other farm markets because this is the best one in Westchester, and I really like the vibe you have here. I think we've also built from scratch great music, kids, and culinary programs that feature local talent and builds bridges to the downtown business community. And all of the participants, all of our culinary volunteers, the kids volunteers, and the music, they've all said that they want to return. Now, we don't necessarily want all of them to return, because some are better than others, but for the most part, they've been fantastic. And we do want to see them come back and make next year's planning a little bit easier than it's been last year. And the last point I wanted to make before I get into the data is that when I came here and presented the part of the pre-market plan, we talked about the market goals. We talked about creating a social community meeting place that's a focal point for the village, and that benefits local farmers in the Hudson Valley, and all of those have been met and exceeded. But let's go into the numbers and take a look at what's going on here. Community markets provided us with the attendance counts for every week. At the time that I did this, I think we had 13 weeks of data. And the top bar shows the average weekly attendance, over 1,700 people coming into our market every week. That compares with last year, 645, and then the 5-year average over the same time period of about 800. Now, last year, we know we had terrible weather. We had rain almost every Saturday. This week, it never rains on Farmers Market Day. Saturday has always been the best day of weather for the week, and we've taken advantage of that. It's been great. We also know the economy is better this year. But again, so I tend to look at the 5-year average as more of a benchmark, because I think last year, was down relative to the average. So even comparing the 5-year average to what's going on this year, we're up over 100%. And the market has a cycle itself. So the middle weeks when you have peak summer produce, we're seeing numbers around 23 to 2,500 in mid-July, which were balanced out by lower numbers in the beginning when there wasn't as much produce in the market. So that's the big one. The market has more than doubled in attendance. We have a couple of regular programs that we've made the centerpieces of this market. First is music. So for 21 weeks, starting with opening day and running through October 23rd, we have scheduled live music in the market. The talent is highly accomplished. A lot of them play at the Pleasantville Music Festival. Most of them are selling their CDs. It's mostly folk rock, but we have a couple of other genres as well. There was some concern we wouldn't get musicians to play for free. In fact, we've booked really excellent talent, and they all play for food. Basically, we give them money that we encourage them to spend in the market, $20, and they've been more than happy to do that. And all the time I go up to them when I'm there on Saturday and I thank them. I say, thank you so much for playing in our market. And they're like, no, thank you. This is awesome. What a great market you guys have here. I thought I was going to be playing to 20 people and a couple of farm stands. I can't believe how great this market is. And they all want to come back. Kids activities, we've been getting about 35 to 65 kids per week. We had a magic show. We have another one coming up on October 16th. We do a lot of arts and crafts. We had a big tie-dye event where we did about 70 tie-dyes. We've had music and movement, kids yoga, storytelling, puppet shows. And as with the music, we've been able to get top quality talent, all volunteered in exchange for exposure and promotion. And we've also made a special effort to try to reach out to some local businesses as well. We had Flower and Sun. We had Amazing Pottery, which is up by the Mrs. Green's in Briarcliff. Just last week, we had a local business, and I think we have Academy of Dance Arts coming this Saturday. We have culinary programs. We had 2 chef days, each one featuring chefs from local restaurants. On the first one, we had Chef Nalini from Bollywood. We had Dan Petrelli from Haven, and we had Phil McGrath from Iron Horse, all doing demos in the market. We have the apple pie contest coming up on the 16th, which is being run in partnership with the Community Scholarship Fund as a fundraiser. And Community Markets has continued all of their culinary programs in our market. The heirloom tomato tasting, the cider tastings, the apple tasting, and the corn roast featuring, why am I blanking? Pono.
The Corn King.
Pono the Corn King, right. Pono the Corn King. So with all of these, so we have music every week, we have kids every week, we have probably like 1 or 2 culinary programs a month. So we're doing about 11, on average, we're doing about 11 to 12 programs or events every month in the market. In terms of the vendors, we have a number of new vendors because we have a lot more space this year than we had in the past. The new vendors, and they're not necessarily entirely new categories, but the categories in which the new vendors have come in include prepared food with the guest chef truck, mushrooms, coffee and tea, eggs and chicken, pesto, flowers, which is actually being sold not by a dedicated flower vendor, but by some of the other farm vendors, beef and orchard fruit. According to the market survey, and we'll get into this detail in a few minutes, they say they're looking for more meat and fowl, more dairy, more flowers, more frozen desserts, and more organic produce. From the vendor side, and we didn't do a vendor survey as part of this, but just from, I'm in the market for 3 to 4 hours every Saturday. People come up to me, and so this is not like official survey stuff, but just more hearsay. Some of the vendors have been frustrated by space limitations and layout or the lack of shade. It is hotter out on the pavement. It was just the way things have to be in terms of the logistics. Not everyone gets the space they want, because then they would infringe on what someone else wanted. And luckily, I don't have to deal with any of that. Community markets has to deal with all of the vendor layout and all of those issues. There's overlap in some categories that may need to be addressed. Again, coming from the survey, a lot of comments about, hey, we've got 3 of these, but none of those. How about some rebalancing? We'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. Quickly, survey methodology. We had 208 completed surveys. We have, of course, our Facebook fan page with about 440 fans. We did emails to friends of the market. These are people who signed up at the various events like Pleasantville Day. So we have a bunch of emails. We have the Yahoo group page for Pleasantville. We basically solicited people in the market to fill out the forms by hand, and then we manually entered. And CM also had an email link to the survey, which was all done online. The survey was open for 3 weeks. It closed on August 10th. So let's get into some of the numbers. Where do our visitors come from? 3/4 come from the village of Pleasantville. And as I mentioned before, a lot of them who come from other parts of Westchester have farmers markets in their own towns, but prefer ours. A lot of people have asked me, what do you make of Chappaqua starting a market? And I say, it's great. They've got a lot of parking. We don't really pull people in from Chappaqua, at least according to this survey. And these numbers are pretty consistent with the last survey that was done. I think it was done 3 years ago. Chappaqua was also just, a couple of percent. So the big one is Pleasantville. The 12% is other Westchester, which was a lot of Mount Kisco, Bedford, southern Westchester. Molly, our market manager, said she sees a lot of people coming off the train, coming up the stairs with their baskets and going right into the market. I don't know if they're coming from other parts of Westchester. I can't believe they'd be coming up from the city, but maybe. We didn't get anyone from New York who answered the survey. One of the things that's interesting about this is, again, this is back of the envelope kind of math, but if 3/4 of the people are from Pleasantville and we're getting 2,500 people in our busy weeks, that means we're getting about 1,800 or 1,900 people from Pleasantville in the market on any given Saturday, which is about 1/4 of our population, which is pretty incredible when you think about the goal of this being a community meeting place and a social place, that we're actually pulling in 1/4 of the town every Saturday into the same place. We asked some questions about their visitation. How often do they come? 58% come 3 to 4 times a month. 32% come every other week. 7% once a month. 3% a few times a year. Most of the people we know from other questions that were asked in the survey who are coming a few times a year, they're people who've it was like their first time in the market. And so they're like, oh, what do I say to that? And I said, well, you could say a few times a year. I think, the real big takeaway for us here is that when you look at almost 60% of the people are coming 3 to 4 times a month. That means it's part of their weekend routine. When you're coming 3 to 4 times a month, that pretty much means every Saturday that you're in town. So it's just great to see that this is really becoming part of the weekend routine for our visitors. How long do you stay in the market? My own kind of empirical observation suggests that people are not very good at estimating their time in the market. They may tell their spouses, I'll just be gone for 30 or 60 minutes, but I think they're staying a lot longer. I know we have a lot of people who just sit at those chairs for 2 hours, and I see them because I can't get a seat. But we have...
So 1/4 of our population is lying to their spouses?
Well, there's always a little sampling error. I'm just saying like, I'm saying 2% more than 90 minutes, and there are a lot of people who spend more than 90 minutes. But look, if we're getting 2,500 people, 2%, it's still a lot of people, right? So anyway, 60 to 90 minutes, 6%. But the bulk of the people say they're spending between 15 and 60 minutes. And not too many people darting in for 15 minutes or less. How much do they typically spend? The modal number there was about 25 to 50. About 1/4 of the people say 50 to 100, and 7% are above that, and 20% below 25. From how many vendors do you make purchases? 70% 3 to 5, 20% 1 to 2, about 10% do 6 or more. And so, the really important question we wanted to ask is, so how is this different from what you did in the past? Has anything changed? We know a lot changed in the market. What about your visitation? Has the way that you have experienced the market changed? So after we asked the questions about how long do you stay and the number of vendors and how much you spend and how often you come, we asked if you have come to the market before, and not everyone had, but if you have, how does the way you're spending time and spending money in the market this year compare to what you did in years past? And what you can see here is that almost half of those surveyed are spending more time, more money, or more Saturdays at the market, or buying from more vendors. So the dark blue on the left and then the light blue second to the left, that's a lot more than last year or a little more than last year. And then the very light blue is about the same. It tells a really great story. I mean, if you look at the same as being, well, that's a wash, but half the people are spending more, there's also very little offset. The kind of like the greenish gray is less than last year. So very few people are actually spending less time or less money in the market. And some people weren't here in years past, so they couldn't make the comparison. But this was a really great finding that the things we were trying to create, like a place for people to stay and linger and spend more money and spend more time, is working. We asked what they thought of the changes in this year's market, and this is where we were really blown away. We wrote down all the major changes to the physical layout, the logistics, the programming, and we asked people, do you like it? Do you love it? Could you take it or leave it? Do you not like it, or do you hate it? And what's graphed here on this page is the like it or love it, also called the top 2 box, top 2 out of the 5 choices. And then they're ranked in order. Incredibly, 8 out of the 9 ranked above 70%. And I do a lot of surveys for work. This is almost unheard of. I mean, usually you're going to get more neutral stuff or a few people who hate it. There are very few people who hate the changes. There were a few, but not many. The things that people like the most: creating a pedestrian-only area. It looks like about 92% loved it or liked it. Additional vendors added to the market, kind of neck and neck with the pedestrian-only area. Moving the vendor trucks out of the visitor parking lot, reconfiguring the location, creating the seating area, the culinary events, the live music, the chef demos, and then kids' activities, which have a kind of a narrower appeal. But this is overall a very strong endorsement. We had open-ended questions. We said, tell us what you like most about the new market. It pretty much reflected what was in the last slide: the layout and configuration, pedestrian-only, safety, vendor variety, the market vibe, the level of activity, the community feel, the music and kids, food quality, festive atmosphere. You see the quotes, the new configuration is brilliant. Further down, for those of us with strollers, it is such an improvement. You see a lot more people with strollers this year than last year, because this year's is room. Last year, the sidewalk was just too congested. I pushed a stroller last year, and it's tough. You block traffic, really. So that's probably one of the more frequent comments. And when people who know that I'm involved with the market come up to me, they say, I feel so much safer in the market than I ever did before. I can let my kids run around a little bit. I keep an eye on them, but I don't worry about them getting hit by a car the way I did last year. What respondents did not like about the market, we like I said, we solicited their constructive feedback as well. The number one answer, 88 people answered this question. About 40 of them said nothing. There's nothing that they don't like. Once you slice that one off, the next most popular answer is the prices are too high, the parking is more difficult, it's kind of hot, the lines and crowds, and there were some vendors that were singled out for criticism. One in particular received some negative comments in light of some alleged violations about the grow your own rule, which was covered by the New York Times, and they're still in our market. But in general, I mean, even here where we were saying, what could we do better? What don't you like? They're still saying, I love everything. It's a great job. One person said, need more seating. And the next week we got 2 more tables. It's a victim of its own success. Parking is harder now. There are really long lines. I mean, even at 8:30, the line for the fishmonger, Pura Vida, is usually about 8 or 9 deep. A lot more people are bringing dogs, and some people don't like dogs. We try to accommodate all of our guests. Tony has put out dog watering bowls now with fresh spring water, so that our canine guests can also partake in a little break on a hot summer day. Some people said it feels cramped, which really surprised me. Frankly, I thought last year was really cramped, but then again, we have 1,500 more people coming during our peak days. Vendor mix. What do you think of the mix of vendors? 60% said great, no need to change a thing. 35% good, few categories missing, few changes needed. Only 5% thought major improvements were needed. In terms of the vendor mix comments and order of frequency, a lot of people said they'd love a regular cut flower vendor. We used to have one. He left the market a few years ago, and Community Markets did a nice job recruiting the farmers to include in their crop plans when it was still early enough for them to do something about it. Some space for flowers. I know Newgate Farm, Bialis are both doing cut wildflowers. One other one is I forget who, but there's another on the other side. There's another vendor who's doing a little bit of fresh flowers. Other comments: need more. A lot of people wanted raw milk, fresh yogurt. I think there were some rules about what we can actually sell regarding raw milk. I don't even think we can sell that, but it doesn't stop people from asking. Need more meat and fish. A lot of people would like to see crafts and non-food categories brought into the market. Wider variety of cheese and wine, and organic fruit was also the other frequent comment.
No Captain Lawrence booth?
We actually asked about that. Not allowed by the New York State Department of Agriculture. Is that who regulates farmers markets?
No,
Or
probably just that we have so many requests for bakers, we get overwhelmed.
But the beer.
Oh, the brewery.
Yeah, the brewery.
Yes.
Yeah, they're not allowed.
Yeah, so far beer is not allowed at farmers markets, just wine.
Well, what would be different from selling beer and selling wine?
It's the alcohol authority just doesn't allow it. There's difference, I don't know the answer to that. It's just the law.
Well, the wine is higher, but
Wine's higher. You can buy beer in a grocery, but not wine.
it's just not allowed at farmers markets.
Yeah.
You want to repeat that answer to the mic so people
Oh.
in the audience at home can get it.
Oh, sorry. The question was, can we get Captain Lawrence or another craft brewer in? And the answer is no, because by state regulations, they're not allowed to sell beer in farmers markets, only wine. Music, the music is we spent a lot of time and effort trying to get the right mix of music. We wanted to make sure we had great talent and hit the right volume and it created the right atmosphere, and we wanted to get some feedback. We asked, what is your opinion on music at the Pleasantville Farmers Market? 60% said music enhances my enjoyment of the market. A third, 34%, said they don't feel strongly about it either way. And only 6% said music interferes with my enjoyment of the market. We asked a follow-up about the quality of the performers. 60% said the performers were high quality, 38% deemed them fair quality. Less than 3% thought the music talent was poor quality or inappropriate for the market. I should say, even though that's within the margin of error, and you could just negate that, I should say, because I did go through and I looked at every survey, there were, 4 or 5 or 6 surveys where people just went straight down the line and they said they hate everything. They hate the configuration, they hate the kids' activities, they hate the music is too loud, the kids' activities interfere with their enjoyment of the market. They're just some people that are just haters. I mean, we counted everything here, and we're reporting what they said. I think you should know that, like, when you see this noise down there about, like, the 2 or 3% who just hate it, you're wondering, like, who hates music? In general, again, since I saw the raw data, I can tell you it's the same people who hate the new configuration, hate the seating, hate the vendors. They hate everything. Well, I don't know what they were doing in the market answering your question, but we count everyone's opinion is important around here.
plants.
Yeah, right? Right. Plants from the other markets, right? But they won't stop us. What do you think of the volume? So, this is a question because, we want to create the right atmosphere, but we don't want to interfere with commerce. We said, is it too low? Is it appropriate? Is it too loud? Almost everyone said it was appropriate for the market environment, 76%. About twice as many people said it was too low as said it was too loud, but again, even the sum total of that is just about 10%, and 13% don't know or hadn't noticed. Kids events. 25% of the respondents have kids who either occasionally or usually participate in the programming, and that seems about right. We have, again, we got like 35 to 65 kids on 1,800 people in the market, so that felt about right. We know that's not for everyone, but for the people who do have young kids, it does give them something really nice to do and a little bit of a break from the action, since the young kids usually don't like, don't enjoy the shopping element as much. Importantly, nearly everyone who's participated rated the programming quality as good or excellent. That's 44 out of 47 people said it was good or excellent. Again, there were those 3 people. And the variety as good or excellent. I think one of the most important takeaways here is that even the people who do not participate in the kids' activities believe that the presence of this programming enhances the market. So more than 15 times as many people, 63% versus 4%, 15 times as many people said kids' activities enhance the market experience and environment versus interfering with the enjoyment of the market. And really, with the location of the kids' activities being kind of out of the market, I don't know how it could really interfere with anyone's enjoyment of the market. But a couple of people came up to me and said it does interfere. And again, we value everyone's opinion, so we recorded it. But we have a really nice spot. If you haven't seen it, it's kind of where meat orchards used to be in the old market setup. It's between 2 trees. It's always in the shade. It's a nice quiet area. The trains go by. If the performer is not capturing their attention, they get up and they run to the fence and look at the trains. If the performer keeps their attention, they stay seated. We asked questions about media because we want to understand really how to reach these folks. We said, what media do you frequently read or use? New York Times was tops at 84%, then the Examiner, followed by Facebook and the Journal News. We asked them what their top 3 media channels, what were the top 3 media channels where they would expect Pleasantville Farmer Market ads and information to be so that they could stay updated. 61% said email is best. After that, the Examiner, the Journal News, then Facebook and shop windows. Media choices with very low rankings included Yahoo, New York Metro Parents, and the Hudson Valley News. Community Markets runs a great email program. They promote all of their markets, so a weekly they collect emails in the market. A weekly email goes out to everyone who's signed up. You can find your market. We've been getting really good promotion on their emails. All of our events have been listed, our music, our kids events, in addition to the usual vendor call-outs when a vendor is doing a special or there's a special day vendor there. The Pleasantville Farmers Market marketing uses all of these channels, but most of the paid marketing is multi-market, where we're part of a larger list of events. The things that are unique to our market include the Facebook social media, where we're up to about 440 fans on Facebook, the shop window signs, the overhead road signs also, which I didn't list here, but those are also dedicated just for our market. And then the other channels that are run by community markets are mostly, except for the opening ad, they're mostly promotions that include multiple markets like Mount Kisco, Pleasantville, and what's the other one that's in the threesome?
Austin.
Yeah, Ossining. Right. So like the ads in the Examiner usually include the 3 of them. The event listings that are we provide all the event listings, which then get published into the community markets emails that go out, and they're up on the community markets website as well. We've been providing them to the Examiner happening section. That's been kind of sporadic because I haven't been regularly sending them up there. And I think going forward, we'd like to, there are other places in Westchester that list weekend happenings. The Journal News, New York Metro Parents, and we'll work out next season with community markets, kind of who's going to do that, so we get it out to them early and we get our listings every week. Key takeaways, all of the changes, especially regarding the layouts and vendors, have been really enthusiastically received, overwhelmingly embraced. In addition to the survey feedback, the attendance is up over 100% over the 5-year average. The goals around the market becoming more of a social community event are being fully realized. As I mentioned before, back of the envelope calculation, over a quarter of the adult population of Pleasantville is coming to the market in midsummer. I think there's a real good synergy, and again, this is partially my opinion, but also comes straight out of the survey in the open-ended questions. It's a really good synergy among the individual elements that makes them more valuable together than alone. Each one, the music, the kids programming, the seating, the vendor mix, the configuration was positively reviewed. So everyone, when we asked individually, do you like this? They said yes, but when you said, what do you like about the market? People tended to just write the whole thing. They just said, there's just a great vibe. It's everything. So we wanted that. I mean, when we talked about, we wanted a certain vibe in the market, a certain energy level, and I think we're getting the feedback that people like that too. The visitors like that, and that's working. Going forward, concerns need to be addressed in next year's plan. We have to work with community markets to understand the vendor perspective. This was just a visitor survey. We have to understand, what's working for the vendors and what isn't, determine whether this market's a good fit for those who are uncomfortable with the changes. I mean, if there were vendors, and I don't know that there are, but if there were vendors who said, I don't want a market that's so energetic, the music is a little bit too much, the kids, it's too busy, whatever, or for mixed reasons, they're not getting their share of the business. Community markets will probably hear about that long before we will. And I think going forward, since I don't think we're going to be expanding again next year, we want to make sure that we have the right mix. So if it's not working for someone, if someone's unhappy and they either select out or they get selected out, we'd have an opportunity to bring someone else in. We can. I was talking to Miriam earlier today, and I said, I think really the only thing left to do is sort of tweak at the edges around the mix of who's in and who isn't to make sure that we do have the right mix. But nothing as big as what we did from last year to this year is coming next year. So our forward plan includes filling vendor category gaps, improving the marketing efficiency, improving the whole storage and DPW coordination, with just getting a bigger shed that's a little bit more sturdy and preferably with a little bit more headroom, because I keep banging my head on it every Saturday when I go in there. Smoothing out the whole event planning and reimbursement process, which we figured out by midsummer a way to get all of our volunteers reimbursed. Basically, Andy and Amanda and I fund them out of our pocket, and then we seek reimbursement. But that it works better. We don't want to make the volunteers wait. Long-term plans include exploring avenues for expansion, better parking. We know we may have some parking coming online behind the post office next year. The provision of, and that includes both the provision of more spaces as well as the communication of where the spaces are. When I drive, I park behind the bookstore. There is great parking there right up until about 11:30 or 11:45 when the matinee at the Burns starts. And I know, people complain about parking a lot. And I say, there's an empty lot 100 feet away from the market entrance. And we want to have better communication with consumers and much better logistics coordination with police and DPW. I want to say DPW, by the way, has been fantastic. They're there every Saturday at 7. They set up the cones, the garbage cans, they set up the tents. We do need a couple of new tents, which will be in our request for next year. We want to, the police comment was really just to make sure that the cars that do park overnight are getting towed early enough for the vendors to get in there and set up their stands. There was a problem earlier in the summer with the tow trucks not getting there until 7 a.m. when the farmers are there at 6 a.m. They really need to be setting up. But I think that got straightened out as well. That's it. Happy to take any questions on the survey or anything else.
What tents are the DPW setting up?
The question was about the tents the DPW is setting up. We have a tent for music, and we have a tent for the kids' activities, and when we have a culinary event like a chef demo, we need a tent for that.
These are the 10 by 10 pop-ups?
These are the 10 by 10 pop-ups. I understand there was a time in the not too distant past when the village had 20 or 30 of them. I think we're down to like 3 or 4 working ones. The ones we have are like held together. I think one of them is being held together with a little duct tape and string. So they're not super sturdy. We don't have sandbag weights for all of them, and community markets for safety reasons requires that all tents be secured so they don't blow away. We have 4. So we have 2. So right now we're using 2 tents on most Saturdays, and we only have sandbag weights for one of them. The tent we're using for music is not large enough for a larger band. It's fine for a duet. Like this coming weekend, we have a 6. We have Nantahagan Creek, a 6-piece band playing in a 10 by 10. Again, it doesn't work very well. Some are in the tent, some are out of the tent. So we'd like to get a 10 by 15 and set it up with the 15 wide facing the market. And we have a really good location for the music. They play right on the north end and kind of put the music into the corridor, so they're not blasting it into any vendor. But yeah, on days when we need 3 tents for culinary, kids, and music, we don't have enough.
Okay.
Attendees are discovering the Manville Road lot. This Saturday, it was full.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Oh, yeah.
You want to just repeat that comment?
So Tony Emerson commented that people are starting to discover the Manville Road lot because it was full this weekend.
I'd be interested in knowing how many people drive to it and how many people walk. Because I've noticed a lot of people walking through the village on Saturday mornings, with their bags of fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, Molly, the market manager, stands right by the Metro North entrance into the market because she said, I can see everyone from there. And there's a lot of people who come over the railroad tracks on the north side. People come across the street from Starbucks. They're coming from all directions, and they're coming from inside the train station. We've put out a couple of notices on the Facebook page encouraging people to walk. We remind them that the manager will hold their purchases. So if they want to park farther away, do their shopping, and then go and get their car. It's actually a nice little place where you can, when you're coming east on 117, you can pull in right behind the manager tent, out of the way of traffic, put your blinkers on, and load your car. And we haven't publicized that a lot. I mean, we might get to a point. We talked to Miriam and John earlier this year about we might get to a point later where we have, like the baskets with the numbers where you can put your stuff, but we haven't had a lot of demand for it. And maybe we haven't had demand because we haven't offered it. I mean, it could go either way, but it seems like a lot of people are walking. And I think they've actually started walking more once they saw that parking was kind of tough.
Right. You could do valet parking.
And I'll tell you, honestly, relative to the increase in attendance, I don't think we saw as much complaining about parking. I mean, you saw on the list, and parking was like the fourth one down in terms of what people don't like. And I mean, kind of given that we've more than doubled the size of the market and some spots came out of the big lot, the perception is that there's a lot less parking. There's actually about the same number of spots because of where the vendors are now parking, but I would have expected a lot more complaints about parking, and there weren't that many.
Well, the other piece of it that I've noticed that has been, at least on some level, a nice synergy is that some more people are parking in metered spaces on, certainly on Wheeler and coming across the train station overpass, but some on Washington as well. And so that of necessity takes people past other businesses and we hope gives them a reason to stop there, drop their stuff in the trunk and then do other kinds of business because, that's another goal of the whole thing.
We like that. We talked about having that market entry point at the north end closer to the center of the business community would hopefully be a good thing.
And I do think, as Tony already mentioned, that we're seeing much better utilization of the lot on Manville behind the bookstore, which is a great thing. And as you already pointed out in your survey, we can probably do a better job of making known other parking options. And also, as you mentioned, we're in the process of buying the Lane Plumbing property behind the post office and expect that by farm market time next year, that will provide an additional supply of something in the neighborhood of 45 additional spaces. So have to be working a little bit on the logistics about exactly how you get in and out of it, but that's going to be a significant positive addition. In some respects, I think the takeaway from the fact that you've grown the market so much without a significant growth in the parking complaints is that, it feels like a happening place, and it's a place worth coming to and struggling a little bit to park. As I have said in the past, if crowded places with difficult parking were the death knell of enterprises, New York City would have died a long time ago. So it's actually not a good thing, but by the same token, it's a manifestation of the enthusiasm people have for the market.
And Hastings, also went through a big growth period, and their parking was farther away from their market area than ours is. They were giving people pins that said something like 200 steps. Like, I climbed the 200 steps as a kind of a badge of accomplishment. We don't have to do anything like
we'll
that.
have this 400 steps, the 600 steps. You get a gold pin for 1,000 steps.
Right. I mean, Chappaqua probably has a better parking situation. They have an enormous lot. We have a good parking situation. We talked about, maybe creating something like the hidden lots of Pleasantville, because I think that's one of the ironies is that there is a lot of parking. People just don't know about the lot behind Lucy's. They don't know how close that is.
Scavenger hunt?
Scavenger hunt, a little postcard, that hidden lots of Pleasantville and give it out at the market. People at the Burns might be interested in that as well. I'm sure people from out of town need to know this.
As is evident from the market, you and Andy and Amanda have done a spectacular job. We thank Miriam and Susan and
And Tony
Community
and Sarah.
Markets.
Tony.
Tony Emerson has been there since day one and is the engine of progress for a whole lot of things in the village of Pleasantville. And as we have just seen from the presentation you made, we benefit in 1,000 ways from volunteerism in Pleasantville. But when you have the kind of horsepower you get when you have a guy who spends his life on a professional basis doing branding and marketing and strategy and applies that to an enterprise like this, it's no wonder we see the kinds of results we have seen. So,
well, thanks. And I think I'd like to jump on that goodwill to say we are looking for volunteer judges for the apple pie contest on the 16th, and being an elected government representative automatically qualifies you to taste apple pie. In fact, it actually
traditionally-
requires one of you.
No, traditionally, it was the newest trustee that had to do it. I
Who
would
is-
say that was what we used to do, remember?
Sounds like great fun to me.
We picked the newest
Is it-
trustee
is it-
had to be a judge in the pie tasting
Is
contest.
it
Well, we're
already?
going to need more than one judge. We're expecting
No, we had-
somewhere
we
like
had,
between 30 and 50 pies.
Yeah,
Is
so
it-
that was just one of the, we had 3 judges. We picked the newest trustee and 2 from local restaurants.
we clearly
So we
need...
had Phil did it a number of times from Iron Horse Grill.
We need
You want
trustees
the
who-
mayor?
Yeah, well, here's my problem. With 30 to 50 pies, I probably would gain 10 pounds that day. I'm going to be out of town on the 16th, and therefore I will not be present to
why I
judge
said
the
no in
apple
my
pie
emails.
contest, and therefore will not be in the crossfire, nor will I gain the 10 pounds. But my colleagues, my Scar State could easily
Brian
afford
was,
it.
Brian
And
tasted
who
it
knows?
many times.
I've
He's
filled
done
that
it.
role.
He's definitely
All right.
done it.
Somebody's
Well,
But
got
I
just-
think
Just send someone out. It's like
I think Steve,
send someone out of the
Steve
fort.
said yes. Steve already said
Fine with
yes.
it. As long as it's not conflicting my voting for my wife's pie. At the end.
it's all going to be anonymous. It's all.
You may have to recuse yourself from
No,
that
we're
one
going to
pie.
put a blindfold on you and just keep
Right,
the
that's
forks
true.
coming.
Well, let me just
Trustee.
end by thanking you again. Peter is in a sling because he had some shoulder surgery, and to be here on this occasion so soon after that is an example of what you have done for us and what you continue to do for us. So I thank you for that, and I'll just leave you with two thoughts, and that is that the farm market is clearly a piece of the bigger picture. The Westchester Magazine issue that just came out this week lists Pleasantville number 6 in the top 10 places to live in Westchester County, which is a proud place to be. Of course, there's just no reason we're not number 1. And
Well,
we could-
we're the number 1 inland. We're the number 1 non-waterfront town.
that is
right?
Good way to look at
Yeah,
it.
the first 4 were Hudson Valley,
Yeah,
Hudson
that's
towns,
like cheating.
river towns,
Really
and one of them was
that's
Mamaroneck.
almost treating.
we're planning
We have to
a,
draw attention to our frontage on the Sawmill.
so
Nanny Hagen Park.
it's this kind of thing that makes
Pond.
Pleasantville a great place to live. And I was at the market a couple of weeks ago and encountered someone who finds out indirectly that I'm the mayor, and she says she lives in Croton. And I said, well, why don't you live in Pleasantville? And she said, that's their long-term plan. They intend to move to Pleasantville, but she said, every time I have friends who are thinking of moving to Westchester, I say, you've got to look at Pleasantville. They've got a great market and lots of other good things happening. So that's the kind of synergy that's spilling out in all kinds of ways, not only in the people that are at the market every day, but the volunteerism that has surrounded it. And we've now got quite a bunch of Pleasantville people involved as vendors in the market and people in the nearby area. So it pleases me no end to see the community recycling its energy and its dollars, not only to support itself, but also to support sustainable agriculture and the work that Community Markets has done for many years to kind of create a new market in a world that for a while looked like it was going to get steamrollered by agribusiness. So good news for Pleasantville, good news for the Hudson Valley, and thanks to all of you for all your support and all you do. Look forward to Nanahagan Creek this week.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. There's a slight modification to Resolution 206. All right. We will go forward with our resolutions. Number 202, Steve.
Resolved that pre-check register dated September 27th, 2010, covering check numbers 67516 through 67594, has been reviewed, and they are hereby approved as listed below. General Fund, $164,027.18. Water Fund, $122,078.95. Capital Fund, $26,591.59. Refuse Fund, $19,366.56. Pool Fund, $6,901.96. Trust and Agency, $1,631.25 for a total of $340,597.49.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments or corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Mindy, 203.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby authorizes the budgeted salary increase of 3.3% for the following management confidential personnel effective June 1, 2010. Superintendent of Recreation, Superintendent of Public Works, Community Outreach Worker, Building Inspector, Village Treasurer, Deputy Village Treasurer, Village Clerk, Court Clerk, Police Detective Lieutenant, Police Lieutenant.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have had ongoing discussions and recently had a meeting with our management employees talking about salary increases. Our management employees are not represented by unions, whereas our non-uniformed employees are all represented by Civil Service Employees in America and the uniformed police, other than the police administration, by the Pleasantville Police Benevolent Association. So we end up in the difficult circumstance that there are contractual increases built into existing contracts for PBA and CSEA, and no such certainty for the people to whom they report. As you know, we confront difficult circumstances financially, both within the village and in the economy as a whole, and the message we have sent here is that respecting all that these good people do and the good work that they give to the village, we have authorized a 3.3% increase, which is roughly in line with the increases that those other groups receive, but that going forward into the coming year, we are at the moment projecting a 0% increase. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. 204, Brian. No, Steve, right?
No,
was
Brian.
me.
Brian.
Go right.
Because it's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Okay.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the mayor to sign the fire hydrant rental agreement with the Pleasantville Fire Department.
Is there a second?
Second.
One of your favorites.
It's my perennial favorite.
Patty, you want to describe the history? People are probably
Oh, it's a-
unaware of the fact that this goes on.
It predates my history, which is getting rather lengthy
I was
itself.
Patty was here when the village was incorporated in 18.
Thank you. I gather when the fire district was incorporated, it under law had to have some relationship with the village with respect to use of hydrants, so we created a hydrant rental agreement. They're fairly common, and this agreement is valid for 5 years. And the fire district pays a fee per hydrant, equivalent, starting at $240 and escalates to $260. It's the current schedule that's in effect right now, too. It's
And what do they get for that rental?
they get use of the hydrant unmetered. So if there's fires, if there are flow tests, if there are things that the district needs to do, this compensates the village for use of hydrants.
For the water,
Yeah.
the actual water costs. And who maintains the hydrants? Who paints them?
The village does all of the maintenance, all the exercising of valves and flushing of the hydrants and the water system. So we're responsible for that, but this is just for the ability to basically draw water from the system.
Access them, yeah.
And use the hydrants.
I never knew this. This is like, obviously it's a 5-year agreement, so it's
Yeah.
predating. It's
Yeah,
the
no,
first time I've had to
Right.
approve this.
They've been
so I
around-
never
they've
knew
been around
anything.
many
This is
years.
interesting.
The Pleasantville Fire District, as all of us know, provides remarkable service to us, and there is a fire district tax levy that is included in the bill you get for county and town taxes that helps underwrite the work they do, and this is ratifying a longstanding agreement whereby we share this responsibility. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved.
And the fire district is not the village district, so that's why that's
It's
the
larger
case.
than the
It's
village,
larger than
right.
the village district, so this is a way of sort of equalizing costs also for people outside the village.
Number 205, Steve.
Whereas sealed bids were advertised in the official village newspaper and received on March 31st, 2010 for the Recreation Center Weatherization Project, and whereas bids were received as per the following. Bidder Dennis Adams Contracting was the low bidder at $52,000. Sundance Energy Contractors, $59,660. Foremost Development, $83,600. Abbott and Price Inc., $89,000. Caladri Development Corp., $97,000. NAC Industries, $147,000. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby awards the bid for the Recreation Center Weatherization Project to Dennis Adams Contracting, 130 Milton Drive, Thornwood, New York, in the amount of $52,000, and authorizes the village treasurer to establish a capital account for said purposes, and further authorizes the transfer of $52,000 from general fund balance to pay for the project.
Is there a second?
Second.
As many of you know, the last use for the old recreation center on Bedford Road at the corner of Great Oak Lane was as the home of the recreation department, and we several years ago moved the recreation department out of that building so that the offices are now here, and the recreation programs are scattered in various places, including some that go on in Village Hall and some that go on at the Clinton Street Center, as well as in other locations. The reason for that move was severalfold. The most pressing one was that the building has arrived at the point where it has some serious investment required in order to remain a livable building, and the second point was that the rec department has for a long time felt that the nature of the spaces in the old 1890s building were not really that appropriate to the kinds of programs they use. So the short version of a long history is that the village advertised for potential buyers for that property subject to certain historic district easements that we would have attached to the deed, and at one point we're rounding third base on a deal to sell it to a Pleasantville family that were intending to develop it as a private home. That deal ultimately fell through. We've had a number of offers over the transom in the last couple of years, most of them for uses that are not permitted by zoning. It's a residential zone that permits a one or a two family home but doesn't permit a commercial use. So in the course of this, we continue to explore a couple of options, and I think we have still some viable possibilities, but in the meantime, the building continues to deteriorate. We advertised back in March based on a set of specs put together by Kevin Miley, who is a building engineer who has done a building survey study for us. And what this $52,000 to Dennis Adams Contracting provides is to restore heat to the building, because we had removed the underground oil tank as part of our due diligence to sell it, and also to seal and prepare the building so that it can be kept at a reasonable temperature in the winter, avoid condensation inside, and protect the building from further deterioration, and also make it look a little bit better. So it was.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, Are you done? I don't
No,
mean
go
to
ahead,
interrupt
that's
you.
fine.
You know, Trustee Cunningham is not here because he's at the back-to-school night, so he had to run out. But he has requested that we table this for further discussion. But we understand that there is a time constraint on this because these bids have to be answered by when?
6 months from.
I think the bid
April, May,
was
June,
valid
July,
for 6
August,
months after the opening, so it
So it has
ends.
to be done tonight.
Right.
because
Yeah, it
6
ends in
months
like
is the end
2
of
days.
September.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that being said, I thought that the last time that we looked at this bid, because this is very high, I thought that there were some things in there that we had questions about. That were they really necessary to do? We were looking for the bare bones to winterize it so the building, because I firmly believe it is our responsibility. I'm not backing off from that at all. It is the Village of Pleasantville's responsibility to take care of this building. It's you know, it really is a treasure, and I believe we need to put money into it. How much money we put into it is another story, but I do believe we need to do these things. But I do remember also that we had some questions on the bid, as far as certain items that we were, that were, it was all itemized out, and we were questioning whether we had questions on them. So I was wondering if we had answers to those questions. And then, also, is there any way, can we raise money for people to maybe donate services to help rehab this building? I don't know if I'm sure there's so much talent in this village, and instead of, you know, putting this much aside, that could be an alternative to maybe cut this bid in half, and somebody can match it, or the village can throw in $20,000 or $10,000 or whatever it is, and maybe somebody can match it. So those are just a few.
No, right.
So obviously we can't table this as Trustee Cunningham would like for further discussion and to try to get this price down, because these bids have to be accepted
Well,
tonight.
not only that, it's getting
And it's
cold.
getting cold, so we have to do something. However, don't you remember the questions? I think
I do remember the questions. The bids we have here are based on the spec package that was put together by Kevin
Right,
Miley.
right.
And our direction to Kevin, who is a quality guy and,
That's right.
and did a great
And I
job on
agree,
the building
yeah,
survey study.
yes.
Kevin gave us back the list of points that he believed were important in order to stabilize the building and avoid any further deterioration. So although I respect the thought that there might be some ways to whittle something here and there, I think we're in the circumstance, at least speaking for myself, where accepting Kevin's advice on this seems like a logical strategy. I was in the building this week, and you know, the good news, bad news is that you know, the good news is that it remains basically as it was when I was last there. The bad news is it's clear that it's going to get worse unless we take some action. There are flashing
And I
problems.
agree
There's some
with that.
rotting wood. There's some repair of lintels and this, that, and the other thing. So I do think for the scope of work that was presented, and there are some fairly substantial tasks involved, including restoring the oil tank, putting in a new oil tank, restoring the heating system, checking it out, adding some forced air ventilation, a whole bunch of things. So I think it makes sense to accept the bid as is, especially since I don't think we have the right to start chopping pieces of it out
No.
without rebidding. Am I correct,
Right.
Betty?
If it has a 10% variance, you'd have to rebid.
Right.
That's
So-
usually the tolerance that you get.
So, you know, nobody, the other problem we confront is that, and I think we should explore this further, the question of volunteer support and also perhaps some private fundraising. The problem attached to that is that we might be seeking volunteer support and private fundraising for a building that may at some point end up in private hands.
That's right.
So if this is a remarkable building. In fact, I was in there this week with a couple of people involved in preservation who said this is a building that is a National Register eligible, and a number of people have commented, including the State Historic Preservation Office, that it may be the largest wood frame dome in Westchester and possibly in the Hudson
And that's
Valley. So
very-
it's a pretty remarkable building, and yet the reality for us is that short of money dropping out of heaven, turning it into a useful asset for the village is an expensive venture, not only to make it happen, but also a venture that would probably require more staff on an ongoing basis. And I add to that public activities in the building are a source of concern, and understandably so for the neighbors, since the building is on a tight site and doesn't have its own source of dedicated parking. So there are a whole series of problems, and those are problems that have surrounded this building for a good long while. But by the same token, it's a pretty interesting, pretty remarkable 1890s building, and I think a piece of Bedford Road that, just as you said, government has an obligation to
Oh, no,
to
we definitely
preserve,
do. This is a heavy price tag right now. Now, if we appropriate $52,000, which is, do we come to the point where we have to spend it all? I mean, if, are we required, once we accept this bid, to indeed come through? I mean, they would, if they had to spend more, they would have to, you know, that would be a different resolution. But if we don't think we get to the point where we could put in the new heating system, and I think part of the bid was also a sump pump. 'Cause
Yes.
there's some dampness, there's mold. There's some you know,
Some
pretty big issues.
And I will say, although given the lack of clarity about who may end up inhabiting this building, some piece of this is perhaps money that's just spent as a stopgap measure. That may be the case for the new oil tank, because a new owner might in the end change the HVA system entirely. Some parts of it, like the new sump pump, are value added to the building. So, you know, in the end,
I think they all are. I think it's easier to
Right.
sell a building
Right.
that's not gonna
That's for
fall
sure.
down on you.
Yeah, I like that.
I mean,
I
I
like that.
definitely do. I just wish we could. Also, this bid is from March 31st, and we did. I don't know if we rebid it now, would we be at, we have to put 6 months on a
Probably
bid?
be higher.
well, when we
It'd
bid
be too
this,
late.
we specifically
It'd be higher.
required bids that the bidders would hold for 6 months
Okay.
to give us some time, not only consider the project, but to see whether any of the possible buyers for the building ended up taking responsibility for it before we had to pull the trigger on this. But it's clear at this point that we're not only at the end of the window during
Right.
which these bidders had to hold these prices, but we're also at the end of the window where we can forestall the decision and be sure we're covered for the winter. So
Okay, so what about the appropriation part of it? If we approve this at 52,000,
I think we have to
Well,
do
that's the contract you're
52,000.
entering into, so,
right.
so you have to spend $52,000.
yeah, unless there are change orders, and sometimes they are.
Right.
You know, plus or minus, depending on what, you know, we'll see as the project progresses. There may be changes in some of the materials, there may be price differences. So typically, these contracts don't go down. Typically, change orders escalate the contract.
Well, I mean, change orders would be additional work. They can't
That's
charge us
right.
for materials. They were required to hold these prices
Yes.
for the work that was identified, and it was a pretty detailed spec package that Kevin put together on our behalf. So, I mean, we're in the difficult circumstance. Obviously, we'd like to spend as little as possible, but to protect the building as much as possible, and on behalf of some of the neighbors who have commented about the fact that it's
Right.
starting to look rather
Right,
weather
it's not
beaten.
fair to them either.
It,
Yeah,
it needs to
that's
be
right.
helped out. So I'm a little, I'm mindful of all that you say. I'm a little disinclined to kibitz the advice of a guy who has shown himself to be a quality professional as an advisor in the past. So
Like, meaning Miley.
Kevin Miley.
Yeah. And as far as the change orders, we have had Dennis Adams do work for us in the past, or no?
I don't know.
I mean, I know
don't
that
think
he's
so.
he's a very, very good, he has a very good reputation. I didn't know if he had, you know, what his history was of change orders.
I have
That's-
no idea, Mindy. All I can tell you is that, you know, he's qualified, and
He works all
he's
over.
got about a
Yeah, I know
$7,000
he's
difference.
qualified, and I
Yeah.
hear very good things about him. I'm not saying
No, no,
anything.
no.
I just, if I, you know, if I go forward and my vote yes for $52,000, I want to
Right.
know if he has a history of coming in with change orders once that $52,000 is done, of big amounts, or he can't come
It's
in
hard
at the
to say.
project.
I mean, if the bid documents are not clear, or if conditions have changed once they get into something, that can happen. But if you look at the difference between the first bid
Oh
and the
my
second
gosh,
bid, there's only
it's huge.
there's only $7,000 in the scheme of things.
No,
That's not a lot
I
of
thought
money.
you were talking about
Oh,
the
the
first
rest,
bidder or
yeah.
the
some
last
of them,
bidder, yeah.
Some of them are really out there. But I mean, in terms of, you know, Dennis Adams' bid, it's really not too far out of line with the second bidder. So there's some there's some sense of comfort that his bid is not lowballed and there's.
Well, further, I mean, in the end,
There's room
the issue
there.
of change orders is mostly the question of whether we would add additional work, which we don't anticipate, or whether when they get into the work, they find things are different from what they
Right,
expected,
and
which we also don't anticipate. So, for the most part, we're dependent on our professional who put together the spec package, having done a tight job of it, and certainly our experience in the past is that he has. So,
I would add too that a couple of things. First of all, Dennis Adams is a local contractor. He's right down in Darnwood, I guess, and he has experience in working on old buildings because he does a lot of work in the area.
right.
Yeah.
And old buildings here in this village and surrounding communities. And I don't think he's any stranger. He's not done work for me in the past, but I know of work that he has done. I have no reason to promote him, but I just think that he's from the area, he's not from out of the area. I believe that he has familiarity with working with older buildings. What you raise is really more of a business issue with whether he would lowball or anybody would lowball a job to then make more on change orders. And as Peter said, I think that the spec being complete is a better indication of whether that would happen than a change order for the sake of a change order.
Right.
And will Kevin be part of the management of this process, or how does that work?
As
Or
of
do
the
we do
moment, we've not retained Kevin to do that. We could consider that. I mean,
I don't think we need to do
I
that.
would
No, I'm
think
not
that-
sure.
This is
No,
an
I just-
experienced bidder. I
between
mean,
Steve Johnson and Mike Testa.
right,
It would be Mike.
those are our managers.
It would
yeah.
be Mike.
No,
And,
that's fine.
and mind you, the work is rather clear. And as Kevin himself pointed out at the time we put all of this together, one of the nice aspects of the building is that you actually can see what's going on.
Yeah.
It's not a building with all kinds of plaster walls and the like. You look up at the dome and you can actually see what's going on. So,
Okay.
all right. Did we have a second? We had a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. 185.
No.
Mindy.
206, 185.
I'm sorry.
Chapter
Yes, it's
185.
number
Okay.
206. Amendment to
Okay,
Chapter
thank-
185.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby authorize the referral of an amendment to the zoning ordinance, Section 185-23, to include theaters as permitted uses in the M1 district to the Planning Commission for review and comment.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is occasioned by a request from a group that is now calling itself Arc Stages, which is the combination of the Chappaqua Drama Group, which used to run a theater in the Red Barn Theater in Chappaqua and has been dormant for some period of time since they sold their building, and Little Village Playhouse, which is run by Adam Cohen here in Pleasantville in a basement space on Memorial Plaza. Those two groups have gotten together and hatched the scheme of renting space in one of the warehouses that's at the end of Wheeler Avenue, behind Scarborough and Tweed, with the thought of creating a roughly 150-seat legitimate theater, which would be the home not only for the Chappaqua Drama Group performances, but also for the Little Village Playhouse performances. And the expectation is lots of other groups would rent the space as well in order to make it viable. They went to the zoning board for approval of this because it's in an M1 or light manufacturing district, and the zoning board indicated that because the existing zoning ordinance did not clearly include theaters, that it would be a matter for the village board to consider. And so we are referring the notion to the Planning Commission as required by law, that we may add theaters as a permitted use in light manufacturing districts. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Brian, 207.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville gives authorization to the mayor to sign the amendment to the contract for sale for 434 Manville Road.
Is there a second?
Second?
Could I add to that, with the approval of the mover and the seconder, subject to discussion and agreement between the mayor and the village attorney?
Yes.
The reason I add that is that we have before us a document that actually just got tweaked a little bit today, and I had an extended discussion with Joel Sachs, our attorney, and I believe that what we have before us fulfills the requirements he had established, but I have not had an opportunity to talk to him about it. In the interest of moving this along quickly, I will confirm with Joel tomorrow based on the slightly revised version of the document we talked about yesterday. So,
This may be.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. That's the end of our resolutions. Is there any new business, further comment, anything to be said?
Time flies, doesn't it?
Let me just add one other thing, and that is that last week, Jonathan Cunningham and I went to a dinner meeting of the Westchester Municipal Officials Association, which is a monthly enterprise, and the reason we went to it is that the speaker was the administrative judge for the 9th District, he being the judge that is responsible, among other things, for the mechanisms by which tax certiorari petitions are managed, both for residences and for commercial properties. And as you may have heard over the last 6 months in our discussions about tax grievances in various different settings, we have two issues about it, and one is the need to move these decisions along more quickly so that both petitioners get a response promptly, and the tax levy that we create is actually a tax levy based on the real assessment base as opposed to an assessment base that may turn out to evaporate in years future. But the second part of it is we're also very much affected by the fact that co-ops and condos are rather dramatically favored under state law by their tax assessments, and that has been a particular problem for us recently because the conditions in recent economic environment have favored them even further. So we were anxious to hear more from Judge Schenkman about what's going on at his end of the table, and it was an interesting and useful discussion, and I think a good exchange. The court is seeking to move along these tax challenges much more quickly than they did in the past, and that includes primarily commercial ones. I wouldn't say that we got too far other than to get the issues on the table regarding the impact on the community about condos and co-ops. So more in the future as that story develops, but that was a report worth.
Well, thank you for you and Jonathan for going also. That was, gave us a lot of good information. So, we're ready to go.
Did I miss anything good?
How was back to school night?
My goodness. Takes you back 40 years.
You're on air, you have to say good.
It was great. Takes
Yeah.
you back 40 years. Complete with sitting in those little chairs. Which aren't so little anymore.
Two final comments I wanted to make before we close the meeting, and that is that those of you who have followed the Pleasantville Police Department know that we had two sergeants, John Foka and Bobby Goki, who have confronted medical problems, and I'm happy to report that both of them are now officially retired and therefore officially receiving retirement benefits from Albany. And so we wish them well. We thank them for their service. We thank everybody involved, especially Patty Dwyer, for yeoman service in trying to push that paperwork through a sometimes recalcitrant bureaucracy in Albany on behalf of two people who well deserved the help you gave them. So thank you for that.
That's the easy part, thank you. It's
Patty.
my pleasure.
And
I thank them as well.
To John and Bobby, we hope that they have smooth sailing in the near and distant future, because both have confronted some tough challenges. And then lastly, I wanted to mention that our longtime chair of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, Marilyn Hall, has resigned, and we will be looking to replace her as the chair of the PRAB, as well as to fill a vacant spot on PRAB. And so anybody who has an interest in the Parks and Rec Advisory Board is encouraged to let Patty Dwyer know at Village Hall, or Judy Weintraub, so that we can consider you for that. And if Marilyn is watching, and perhaps she is, I hope she is, we will be choosing an occasion to have her come to a village board meeting and hear from us directly how much we appreciate service that really exceeds the commitment we expect from anybody. Marilyn has been there for a very long time, and in a board that involves lots and lots of effort and lots of talking in the dairy aisle. So thanks an awful lot to Marilyn, and we'll have more to say about her service soon. So anybody else have anything to?
I agree that thank you, Marilyn, unbelievable job, and he really went above and beyond the call of duty. No children in the schools, no children in any of the programs, and she still worked very hard on that board.
That being said, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all for watching. Again, our next meeting is a work session on Monday, October 4 at 7 p.m. Thank you all.